And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
All right, just a couple of segments left on this Saturday night here on the BetQL Network with Brendan Tobin and Jake Noaker. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. And let's go ahead and spin the wheels forward to next week and start at the top. UFC 288. The odds are out and the fights are good. Henry Cejudo, Triple C, is back taking on the Funkmaster Aljamain Sterling. Not only is Aljo unbelievably disrespected over his last handful of fights where he's been the underdog in 2 out of the last 3 of them, but when he ends up winning the fights, he still doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And you asked a question earlier to our guest, Andrew Gambas. If you missed that, check it out on the podcast. What happens if Cejudo, I should say what happens if Aljo wins this fight? Does he get the credit that he deserves? What more does he have to do? How many more people does he need to take out? How many more times does he need to defend the belt? It's not like it was, I get it. People are upset that he was out for as long as he was, and people are upset that he didn't try to come back and fight against Petr Yan, right? Yeah, come on. Anybody listening right now, I believe, is a human. Maybe you have your dog with you, but you're probably a human. And maybe you would do the same thing in the moment. So I don't hold any of that stuff against Aljamain Sterling. I actually think that he is the most disrespected and one of the most underrated champions that I can ever remember.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it, right?
There he goes. Go ahead, throw some shade.
I don't want to, because I think Aljo is obviously one of the most talented bantamweights on the planet. I mean, like, he's reigning over what we all say show week in and week out is the best division in the sport. Yeah, but like, look, the DQ of him getting the belt, the Yan fight was very close. TJ, he fought a guy, who was coming back off of the juice, wasn't quite the same. Also seemed like he went into the fight with an injury, so I get it. Now he's going to take on a guy who's also been out of the octagon for a long time. So I guess, what does he have to do? I don't know. I mean, he's beaten Sandhagen before. He's choked him out. So it's not like he hasn't beaten the number one guy in the division. I don't know, dude. I don't know what the answer is to that. But I do think that I feel like he's got to win this fight impressively. And I think maybe that's an unfair ask of me, but I feel like this has to be one where it's like he has to show out against a guy who's been out a little bit. You're coming in with a big time advantage. You've been active. You've been at it. You've been taking on the Lions. Like, if this is a close fight, I think he is going to get dogged again, even if that is unfair.
I'm looking at it the opposite way. I think if Cejudo wins, it can't just be by decision, ho-hum, he won by the cards. I think he needs to make it interesting because he got the quick road to the fight when, as you mentioned, it's a really interesting weight class where literally 4 or 5 guys could claim the title or at least number one contendership, and then all of a sudden Triple C goes, I think I want to get back in the USADA pool and come back. And Dana goes, all right, nephew, we'll go ahead and put you in the title fight right away. By the way, the last time that Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling lost a fight, I don't know what you were doing back then, but it was on December 9th of 2017. So we're talking coming up on 5.5 calendar years that Aljo has lost a fight, and you just came up with literally like 8 reasons to discredit him off the top. That's what I'm saying. Like, he can't win for losing, for winning.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't make the rules. I just, perception is reality. I like him. I think he's a great personality too. I remember, Funkmaster on the come up, like this guy, everybody was excited to watch him fight. It's just, can you disagree that it's been a weird title reign?
No, he said himself that it's been a weird title reign. By the way, if you like his personality, you're going to want to join Tapped Out next week. Fingers crossed, we're going to have the Funkmaster himself, Aljamain Sterling.
Also a great nickname.
Hear from Henry. Great nickname. Henry Cejudo is supposed to join us. Might get a chance to hear from Dorino, Gilbert Burns. So that's lots of fun as always. Don't want to miss the show coming up next Saturday right here on the BetQL Network. By the way, who do you like in that fight? Because if I haven't maybe expressed how I feel, I think Aljo wins the fight. Like he always wins these fights. Who you got?
I agree with you. I think that Henry being out as long as he has, while I don't think it's going to affect I don't think it's going to affect him as much as it would others because he has that grappling to lean on. He's going up against a very good grappler and a good wrestler in Aljo, a guy who's obviously a very dangerous submission artist. And honestly, I feel like this is one where if I was Henry and we have seen him win some fights with his hands, I would let go, man. I would be one of those guys where it's like, hey, if this fight's going to be standing, I feel like that's where he actually has a huge advantage here because Aljo's hands are a bit suspect. I think that's where you can see now he's a great range finder. He's great at using his kicks. He's a great defensive fighter. So maybe that's a little bit, throwing. I think it just like maybe that's something that Henry goes to a little bit later after some stuff's not working. But no, I do feel like for whatever you want to say about Aljo, and certainly I'm not going to back off saying that I've discredited him here a little bit. And I feel bad about that. Whatever you want to say, the dude wins. He finds a way to get his hand raised, and that you do have to give him credit for because he is very good at it.
Do you feel bad because he's going to come on our show?
No, I don't feel bad because he's coming on the show. Like, it is what I think he knows. I think one of the things that is cool about Aljo is he knows, right? Like I respect the fact that he's one of the more open guys, and I don't think he cares about that stuff anymore. Because it's still interesting. I'll never say that I'm not interested in watching Aljamain Sterling fight. That's not true. I mean, I like watching the guy fight. He's an entertaining fighter. He's a captivating personality. I think he is looking for that signature win. If he does it over a former double champ, it feels like something that should give him credit. I just feel like he's one of those guys, it feels like it's almost cursed. Like he's not going to get the credit because he hasn't got the credit for anything so far.
He is the Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling, the King of Cringe, Triple C. Next Saturday night, main event from Jersey. Producer Jake's actually going to be in the house. That's a pick'em. Co-main event, Bilal Muhammad takes on Gilbert Durinho Burns. I love when guys get back into the octagon after fighting a few weeks before. I've always found that as an advantage, as long as you didn't get completely beat up, right? As long as your cardio is still going to be there. In the case of Durinho, I don't have any question marks there. For Bilal Muhammad, a guy that always asked for this fight and that one, finally they give him, I guess, you tell me, is this a number one contender fight? And I think we would both agree that Gilbert Burns should have been the favorite heading into this fight. But a minus 140 and the comeback on Bilal Muhammad at plus 120, I would have said more like even money on Bilal Muhammad, minus 110 on Gilbert, basically a pick'em fight. What say you?
I love the fact that Gilbert's just getting right back in there. I mean, like we have talked about these guys who will just do it anytime, any place, anywhere. And I feel like the new crown of that has to go to Gilbert Burns because, it's so funny to me because this guy's so nice. I mean, Sean, he's legitimately, I don't know if there's a nicer man in sports than Gilbert Burns, but this guy is a few weeks removed from beating Jorge Masvidal in his hometown and then going on the podium afterwards and telling the UFC, either give me the title shot next or release me so I can go to PFL and win $1 million. And then is like a week later, never mind, I'll save your co-main event. I mean, like that is Gilbert Burns in a nutshell. Like even at that same press conference is like, you know what? I said some things leading up to that Bilal Muhammad. I don't want to say those things about Bilal Muhammad. He's a good guy. I respect him a lot. Like he's just such a gem of a guy, but he's also a monster. He's a monster when that cage door closes. And I do think there's something right now where he's got a little bit of that, like, no one's stopping me on this run. And I love the fact that he's taking this fight on short notice. I feel like it's almost an advantage to him because Bilal doesn't have quite the time to prep for him. It's going to be interesting because you're talking about two guys who, again, are good grapplers. Bilal's definitely got I guess you would say, a wrestling advantage. But, Hamzat didn't ragdoll Gilbert Burns. So am I supposed to believe that Bilal will? Got a hard time believing that. Is he going to outstrike him? This ain't Sean Brady, dude. All respect. Like, you're talking about a guy who wasn't getting his first crack at the bright lights. You're talking about a guy who has lived in the bright lights now for a long, long time. I favor Gilbert. I think that he's a little bit more experienced. He's taken on the creme de la creme. He's kind of dictating the terms on this fight. Not a fight that he was thrilled to take, I think, initially when the matchups were out there, especially with Bilal, supposedly like backing out at the time that it was initially offered. Now he gets it on short notice, kind of as the hero to say, I want that fight. And then both are getting credit to Bilal for taking it too. But I'm leaning Gilbert on this one.
Bilal, by the way, hasn't lost a fight in 4 years. It's been since 2019. You mentioned last time he took out Sean Brady. Before that, Vicente Luque, Wonder Boy, Damian Maia. So big names that at the time were in their prime and different styles of fighter, which Durinho Burns certainly is. So, he's got that in his back pocket.
Yeah, and to Bilal's credit, that Sean Brady performance, Sean was kind of, I think, everybody's darling at welterweight to be like, oh, this guy's next wave, and he's going to be
knocked his ass out,
contender, nobody, and beat the brakes off of him. And honestly, the big knock on Bilal was not an exciting fighter. His fights are boring, and man, he shut a lot of people up with that performance against Sean Brady. So yeah, if that guy shows up against Gilbert Burns, it's going to be. I think it's going to make for a hell of a fight. I think that could potentially be a fight of the night candidate if you get that guy.
This is a great card, UFC 288 from Jersey next Saturday night. We already talked about the main event, Cejudo versus Aljo. The thing I like about it is it feels like at the top of the last few pay-per-view cards, we've kind of gotten some one-sided stuff, right? Like Gilbert Burns has to be the most difficult fighter for Las Vegas to figure out, where he goes in there as Hamzat. Now that I say that, maybe Alexander Volkanovski. But all that does is makes my point. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are even fights. It's not one-sided, where if you told me Cejudo beats Aljo, no surprise there. If you told me Bilal Muhammad beats Gilbert Burns as an underdog, no surprise there. Jessica Andrade comes in a favorite her fight, but not a huge favorite at minus 180. Charles Air Jordan fights against Kron Gracie. Gracie's a dog, but 2-1. Like, we're not seeing those big 3.5 to 1, 4 to 1 type of fights, which is either good or bad depending on who you like to bet, which brings us to friend of the show, Bryce Mitchell. Why is the man who likes to eat ants a plus 260 underdog? I feel like I should empty my bank account on him.
Yeah, I'm wondering a couple things on this one. One, Mavzar has obviously been tough. I mean, the guy has been on an absolute roll. So you're talking about him taking on an undefeated fighter, which he just was before he lost to Ilia Topuria. Topuria kind of diced him up. It was a short notice fight. Yes, he said he wasn't 100% going into that, but I think that's one of the things with Thug Nasty. Like, you're looking at a guy who people just saw him get kind of dealt with by Topuria, and now they think, okay, were we too high on this guy? Were we a little bit too over the board? I'm with you. I think it's a little bit too much of a disrespect the odds makers having him at this number, but I think that's what it is that he just got dealt with his last fight. And so we see this sometimes. If a guy has a really bad performance, the correction is he's got no shot the next time, especially if he's going up against another killer, another guy who is going to be this upcoming prospect, which is, where Topuria just kind of swooped in and was able to get that for him. And hey, listen, we talked to Bryce that before that fight. He's like, listen, the only reason I'm taking this fight on short notice, I need the money. I got to take the fight. And so it's a little bit of a better situation for him than this last one was, but I think that's what it probably is. The odds makers are down on him because of his last performance.
Well, what's a better nickname, Thug Nasty or the Funk Master?
Wow.
Yeah.
Tough. Yep. I'm gonna go Thug Nasty.
I'm going to leave myself out of it because they call me the Sports Machine, which has to be the corniest nickname in the history of radio. So we'll just go ahead and leave that one alone. We've also got Drew Dober on that fight versus the steamroller Matt Frivola. What's your early lean in that one?
I'm going Drew Dober on that one, man. I feel like he is sneakily one of those guys where, like, he's also just never quite gets his just due night fight in and fight out, but he's a dangerous striker, man. He has those hammers and seemingly, like, will always come up with a highlight reel when you're not quite expecting it. So, he thrives in these situations, and I think that he gets the win.
Let's spend a couple of minutes before we get to our final commercial break of the show talking about tonight's main event. Song Yadong, even money, taking on Ricky Simone at minus 120. Does this feel like one that goes to the cards to you? Because both these guys like to bang.
I don't think it goes to the cards. I think we're going to get a finish tonight. I almost feel bad with how much it's getting overlooked because it's like, well, it was originally supposed to be last week. They moved it. So, good that they get a main event. But, we're talking about how good this division is at 135, and feels like if it was another division, you had these guys that this entertaining. it would get a little bit more respect and eyeballs. But still, man, I think that they're both going to be going to make a statement. I think we see these 135 fights; they're typically really, really entertaining. And I like Ricky. I think Ricky's going to get it done tonight.
I'm going to try to pin the tail on the donkey, so get more specific with me. You like Ricky Simone? Give me a round, and how's he going to finish him? By knockout?
I'm going to go round 3 by sub.
Round 3 by sub. And during the commercial break, I will make that official on the BetMGM app. Coming up next, it is the week of the NFL draft, which means we're going to draft some UFC fighters before we get out of here. You're locked into the BetQL network.